of the Energy Environment Committee, the great council member of the 7th District, Felipe Fuentes.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Labange. All right, well, it's my pleasure to bring the August 7th, 2013 Energy and the Environment Committee to order. Do we call a roll here?
No.
No? All right, well, I see enough members here present. We've established a quorum. Let's go ahead and begin with item number 1, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Rafael Prado of the CLA's office. Item number 1, DWP and CAO reports relative to proposed amendment number 2 to an agreement with Microsoft Corporation for technical support software. We have staff from the Department of Water and Power.
Very good. Let's go ahead and invite staff up for their presentation on item number 1. Your names for the record, gentlemen.
Yes, my name is Matthew Lamp. I'm the Chief Information Officer for LADWP.
My name is Gene Gamachi, Assistant Director with DWP with ITS.
Robert Roth with the CIO's office.
Very good. If you'd like to present on the item.
Sure, no problem. The report before you recommends approval of a proposed second amendment between DWP and Microsoft. Approval of this amendment increases expenditure authority by $889,000, taking it from $2.7 million to a new total of approximately $3.6 million. It also extends the term an additional 3 years for a total of 11 years, which expires August 2016. The current contract expires very soon, August 9th, 2013, a couple days. This is a sole source provider, and they provide proprietary software and support. This is only provided by Microsoft and its affiliates, and as a result, extending this agreement with additional funding, it is really necessary for DWP to continue receiving this product support. There's a fiscal impact to the city of $889,000. It's only to the Department of Water and Power's revenue, water and power revenue funds. It does not have a fiscal impact for the city or the city general fund.
Very good. I don't believe there are any speaker cards on the item. Members,
I had a question.
Mr. Labange.
Mr. Garcetti is very in tune as our mayor of the ever-changing world of technology. Has his office reviewed this? Or do you know, or I don't know if the time is right, because I know he's very plugged into this. I just wanted to put a... It was reviewed by the mayor's office?
Yeah, but usually what happens is the mayor refers the item to our office for review, and then he reviews our report plus the department request.
And this was done after July 1st? Okay, I'm good. Okay.
Very good. Colleagues, any additional questions or comments for staff? Hearing and seeing none, is there a motion to approve the measure? Mr. Blumenfield.
Well, I'm just trying to get my head around it. Why the costs increased the way they did, and why did the support hours go down the way they did? It doesn't quite add up to me, so I'm just trying to understand it.
So this is their sort of advanced technical support. It's not software licensing. It's really for 2 types of services. One, some very specific kinds of health checks, like on the complex directories we run, et cetera, or on some what we'd call sort of very complex technical issues that arise. And so the contract extension basically extends our ability to buy these hours. And I think Microsoft raised the hourly rate a little bit. We trimmed back the number of hours we thought we would need based on experience. So that led to the new dollar amount. It's reasonably consistent with what we've had in the past. We tried to hold within the same dollar range and trim the number of hours to address their cost increase.
But it's a sole source contract, right? So does it ever go out to bid? Or is it extended indefinitely year on year by year?
We keep extending it because at this point, the kinds of issues we take to them, basically we need to go to product development in Microsoft, and there is nobody else who can offer that level of depth of support for these issues.
So it's not even just, because I noticed part of it was the email, part of it's all sorts of different things, right?
Right. We use Microsoft for a number of things. So, for example, email, I believe when we did an upgrade and implemented our disaster recovery email operations, so we have that available if we have to fail over to our disaster recovery site in Nevada. there were some special issues we wanted their advice and review on how we were structuring that architecture to make sure it would work. Again, that's something really you need to go to the sort of depth of expertise that Microsoft has. And that's an example of where we would use this kind of service. It's not a day-to-day support service.
It's on day-to-day support
Right.
of the email system.
No, we support that internally with our own
Right.
own staff on day-to-day issues.
And is there the impact on the ratepayers in terms of this? Is it been quantified? Or is it de minimis?
It's really quite de minimis.
Very good. Members, any additional questions or comments? Hearing and seeing none, was there a motion, Mr. Labange?
Move.
Very good. So moved by Mr. Labange, seconded by Mr. Blumenfield. Looks like that's going to be a unanimous vote. Very good. Thank you. Item number 2.
Item number 2, DWP and CAO reports relative to proposed amendment number 3 to a contract with Steve P. Rados Incorporated for construction of the River Supply Conduit Improvement Project. We have staff from the Department of Water and Power and the CAO as well.
Hi, yes. I'm Susan Rogani from the Department of Water and Power. Basically, this project was for the replacement of a large diameter trunk line over 2 miles long. The reason for this replacement it was because part of our compliance program that's mandated for water quality to take our open reservoirs out of service. And in order to do that, we needed to upsize and improve the existing infrastructure. And this particular pipeline was part of that. In terms of this particular job, it was very challenging from the beginning. There were geotechnical conditions that were not anticipated in the locations that we had them, so it required different types of shoring to be employed at the time. We also had this pipeline ranged from 4 feet to 8 feet in diameter and needed to be installed on very narrow streets in the community, and so that required that was challenging conditions. It required some modifications to the existing traffic plans to take into account community concerns, and also additional traffic control and flagging that was requested to try to accommodate some of the businesses and some of the community comments in those particular areas. We had to do a lot of additional restoration of paving because of some of the poor conditions of the street, more than we had anticipated. And also there was a very much an increased level for community outreach and environmental mitigation. We anticipated probably about $3 million was toward that effort. There was a lot of concern by the community for dust, traffic, and noise concerns. And for instance, Ivanhoe Elementary School, when we worked by that particular school, the parents were very concerned about some of the impacts as we're going through that street. So we tried to accommodate them as much as possible. We worked additional evening hours to try to accommodate if there were school events, so we would not be having traffic or dust in the area. We also had dust mitigations in those areas. So all these things were not anticipated when we initially went forward and planned for this project.
The question that I've got, and I know that it's in Mr. Labange's district, and it sounds as if it's absolutely necessary to amend the contract. Just for my benefit, I'm unaware of how we get to amendment number 3, for example, in a contract. So could you briefly help me understand what it is that when you initially go out and ask for the proposed contract, I understand things will change, and this way you have amendments, but how does that process work?
Well, in this particular case, it was about a year ago. We anticipated finishing this contract in 3 years. However, due to the challenges of that job, we had to go and extend the duration of the contract. So the first amendment was to extend the duration of the contract to give us enough time to come before council, because anything over 3 years, we need council authority. So we extended that. That was the first amendment. The second amendment was basically to give it the additional time that we needed to complete this project, which we have until March of 14, plus to add additional contingency amount to the contract. So that was Amendment 1 and 2. We're here for Amendment 3 because at the time we did Amendment 2, we had not really started to work in the area by Ivanhoe School, which there were a lot of challenges, so we didn't anticipate the additional work.
And so so this amendment raises the contract up by about $2.5 million for a
Yes.
total of about $46.5 million.
Yes.
At Amendment 1 and 2, overall, do you think that we stayed within 5% of sort of the initial thought of cost, or are we sort of over by 50%? Not understanding any of the history before that, so where are we?
So the initial contract amount was about $35 million with a contingency of $5 million. With the two amendments that we're talking about, it raises it up for almost another $6 million, so it was considerably more than anticipated with the initial contract.
Very good. Okay. Members, are there any cards on the, no cards? Members, any questions?
Just to let you know, members, this was a long extension of a project. Explain the river supply conduit, how far it goes from its origin in the valley, across the Whitnall Highway, into New Headworks, Silver Lake. Just so you have the familiarity, when you travel the Ventura Freeway right by Travel Town, all that's DWP work going on there. Please just give them the update.
Well, what we call the river supply conduits comes from our North Hollywood pumping station, which is on Van Owen and Morella, in that location. It extends all the way down to what our new tanks are going to be by Forest Lawn, north of Griffith Park. So that's called the upper reach of the RSC. And then it continues from there all the way down into this, bringing water into Silver Lake and Ivanhoe Reservoir. So it's a long stretch of pipeline. Obviously, we cannot replace all of it at once. This was one unit, but we have replaced what we call the RSC3. This is RSC4. We have our RSC 5, 6, and 7, and we also have RSC 1A and 1B, and each of those is about this size, 10,000 to 15,000 feet in length. Right. So it's so probably 12 miles in total that we're replacing.
And I know you're new to this relatively, Susan, but do you know who suggested the area by Travel Town? The
Headworks?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, when we had to look at taking Silver Lake Reservoir out of service, in order to place tanks in that area, it's very congested, and there was a lot of community comment to that. So Mr. Councilmember Labange suggested looking at the Headworks area to place the storage up in the Headworks area to replace storage we would lose by taking Ivanhoe and Silver Lake out of service. It worked very well because hydraulically it was at the right elevation. So we went ahead and are now constructing that storage there. So it's because of Councilmember Labange.
They did tell me they'd have it done before I finish my term, but so it's not going to make it. But you're going to get the water there eventually. But I love you for what you did. The situation, just so you know, these are 96-inch pipes. The resident engineer is here. Is so impressive how she fought to try to make this happen. And the streets were as wide as this room. And it was an older neighborhood with multiple infrastructure in the street. And it was a challenge and a challenge and a challenge. And we did get it done, but we still have much more to do. And I want to thank all of you, especially introduce your whole team there, if you would.
Oh, this is Sabrina Tui. She's our project manager, seeing the RSC4 throughout its entirety. So she's done a great job. And thank you very much, Council Member.
That's all right. But I just want to, just for the record, Sabrina, the pipes are bigger than Sabrina. And she was able to put them in, which was so important. And it's very tough, very deep. It's still challenging. So it was just in a lot of community meetings, and it was just because it may happen to your district at some point because it's old infrastructure. And you're serving the needs, and they're building for the future. So that's the tough thing about it, because you don't know what's under the ground until you get there. Because some of the plans that we have today, back then, we just went out and did it. So I just want to thank Sabrina, especially as a resident engineer, and work with you on these other projects to try to complete it. Thank you.
No, so I couldn't agree more. I mean, you can't anticipate all of the costs at the outset, which is why I ask how much sort of variability has there been from sort of what you initially thought this would cost, and $6 million over doesn't seem incredibly sort of concerning, unless you think that we're not going to be able to finish by March of 2014. Does it look like we're going to be on track to finish this leg of the project?
Yes, we will.
Okay, very good. And do you anticipate, at this point, is there any sense for any anticipation of any increased or additional needs for amendments?
No.
At this point, very good. All right, members, any additional questions? Hearing and seeing none, the motion is made by Mr. Labange, seconded by Mr. Koretz, and it's a unanimous vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very good. We'll move on to item number 3, please.
Item number 3, Chair members, DWP and CAO reports relative to proposed amendment number 1 to an agreement with PricewaterhouseCoopers relative to the department's customer information replacement project. We have staff from the Department of Water and Power as well as the CAO.
Very good. If you all would introduce yourself for the record and present on item number 3, please.
My name is Sharon Grove. I'm the Assistant General Manager of the Customer Service Division at the LADWP.
Matt Lamp, Chief Information Officer, LADWP.
Olivia Seves Valonga from the City Administrative Office. I'll let the department go ahead and make the presentation.
Okay. So, because we do have 2 new members, let me sort of give a historical context to this project. This month, the current customer information system that we use to sort of manage customer contact and all our billing had its 39th birthday. Most of the other utilities that I talk to who are replacing customer information services now, systems now, have either replaced it 1 time or 2 times since this one came live. It has been a very reliable system, but also an extremely constraining system. To give you a sense of it, the small USB storage devices that many of us carry represented millions of dollars of storage when this system went live. As a result, the brilliance of somebody doing a system like this was to minimize use of memory, minimize use of storage. And that basically meant you compressed a lot of data together. We've been living with that for a long time, and it significantly reduces flexibility. It has constrained a lot of our business processes and led to a lot of issues that we have in terms of trying to serve customers well. We've patched around it for many years, but it couldn't stay. When I came to DWP little less than 6 years ago, the board asked me to do sort of a strategic technology review, and clearly this project was the top priority project that we had to do at that time. It's taken quite some time. We started the project by hiring a quality assurance firm. They helped us review sort of the strategy and then write the RFP for the system integrator, which Price Waterhouse won. The first phase of Price Waterhouse's work was really to help us select between what were the 2 systems really that were designed to scale to our size of a billing operation, and those were Oracle and SAP. So through the first phase, we did a selection, ended up selecting the Oracle software, and began the second phase. So this contract actually goes back to a time when not only did we not have complete requirements, but we weren't even sure which software we were going to be implementing at that point in time.
When you say that point in time, just to give us an idea, when was that more or less?
Well, this contract goes back to 2010. It was a 3-year contract that's expiring now.
And this item here deals with the First Amendment to that?
This is the First Amendment to that contract.
Okay.
So that contract involved having them take us through the implementation, and we laid out, we went through some gap analysis, we went through a whole process of looking at some of the key business processes and then beginning configuration. In addition to sort of what we talk about as customer care and billing, there were a number of other systems that had to be replaced at the same time. So we had a system that helped us deal with our customer service forces in the field. And that was looked at and determined that it had some aging issues of its own, lack of support issues of its own, and we made the decision it made sense to replace that as part of this project so we didn't have to try to integrate a new system with much older technology. We had built into the customer information system a process to help us balance meter reading routes. It was, I would say, in today's world, fairly funky, but it allowed us to balance those routes as we added new meters, as new development occurred, etc. But it was inside the old system. So again, we had to find something to help us replace that balancing and bring in a new system and tie it into this one. We had built over the years a system to help our water trouble dispatchers look at calls that were coming in and correlate calls together that were reasonably likely to be related to each other. So we weren't trying to dispatch multiple trucks to really the same problem. Again, because that was inherent now in the old system that was going to be shut down and there was no way of pulling that code out, we had to find a system that could help us solve that water dispatch problem.
So as an example there, because I imagine there's countless examples of sort of the inability for these new platforms to talk to one another, is that because it was proprietary information in the old system, or rather designed in a proprietary nature?
It was our code. It isn't something you'd want to use again. It basically, in this world where we now have GIS systems, it relied on Thomas Guide map segments, okay, as a pre-GIS way of trying to recognize when things were close to each other. So it wasn't something even if you could extract it and modernize it, it really didn't have a good core for going forward in the future.
So from a systems perspective, you all started from scratch with this 2010 contract? I mean, you started
on many systems. There are others where we are connecting. So, for example, we are connecting to the existing electric trouble system, which is used by the Electric Trouble Board to dispatch crews for outage management. Okay? But calls come into the call center. Calls come into the IVR. They route through middleware over to that system. So we had to make sure we have all those relationships built. And frankly, as we went through it, there were a couple other things that sort of were slight curves along the way. So when Mr. Nichols came, he asked us to look very hard at implementing monthly billing for residential customers. It's something our customers want. We'd like to do it. It's clear it's important given the sort of what our bills are and the fact that they change winter, summer, that people's uses change. They can be very big fluctuations, and when they accumulate 2 months' worth of billing at once, it can be quite a hit to somebody's cash flow. So getting to monthly billing was the goal. It wasn't in the original contract. We worked it in. We got fairly far along the way to implementing it and basically made the decision that we needed to hold it till we had the system live and then can switch it to monthly billing. And that was as much because we were very concerned about the impact, for example, in the call center of having a new system, new account numbers, a lot of changes in what the bill's going to look basically the same, but enough changes were going on that we thought if we implemented monthly billing on day one, we would have a potential just swamping of our internal operations. So we deferred it. Most of the configuration for monthly billing is done. There's a little bit of work to be done once we know that the system is live and stable. We had the rate increase last year, and for a variety of reasons, we had to make one structural change in the way we did the energy factors. And rather than just change a value, which was what we had expected, we actually had to, once that came to effect in November, actually had to then go back in and undo some of the configuration that we had for rates, and also the actual bill print program, which has to take the extract and modify to be able to display all those factors properly. So there were some things that came along the way, in addition just to the complexity of what we were dealing with, that put us a little bit farther behind than we wanted to be. We are now sitting in the scenario where our go live is set for Labor Day weekend. We are substantially done, very substantially done with all our testing. We are within days of the point of basically being ready to essentially do regular production practicing for a few weeks before we go live, so that the staff who has to deal with what we call bill segment errors, when they get one, they know what to do with it, they know how to resolve it, they know how to get that bill out quickly. So and on the IT side, to make sure we have everything set for all I think there are 100 different batch jobs that run on different cycles, that we have those ready to go. Our operations staff knows what they have to do. Our production control staff knows what they have to do. And that we have all the monitoring in place, so if something starts acting up, we can recognize pretty quickly what it is. Okay. So that's sort of a background of the project. This contract amendment really includes two major components. I just want to be clear. So part of it is really relating to some parts of scope that we deferred, like completing monthly billing.
Is it all the items that are in the board action of June
Yes.
6th, page 3?
Yes.
That's the inventory of all of the deferred actions that
Yep.
are going to be included in this amendment?
Yeah.
It's also noted in the second page of the CAO report, bullet points that say pretty much in a summary of what the main factors they have to complete in the
Got it.
second amendment.
So there's that part, and then when we complete sort of those deferred items, then the other part of the contract basically gives us some additional support from PwC for the remainder of a extended period. So we have some of their expertise. So as we go on, and if we have to make other kinds of adjustments or we see other kind of problems, we've got some people who have a higher degree of expertise, and we've been able to build so far with our own staff. And so there are two pieces to this. It is one amendment that has sort of both pieces in it, because they really will flow pretty much straight through in terms of how PwC has to position staff.
And just, there aren't any speaker cards on this. I think just to help you understand sort of why I'm so interested in all of this is that, and it's not with the contractor in particular, but at least my experience in the legislature has been when you get into these sort of platform transformation projects, especially if you're talking about some of the ones that we've read about with the judicial system, they become these sort of things of their own. And so that's a real concern, understanding how delicate and fragile sort of these programs are to sort of bring these platforms into the modern era, especially when you've got one that's been 39 years sort of workhorse. Is it your anticipation, this is additional authority that you all will have if you need it, it sounds like, in large part, separate and aside from what it is that you're going to be doing to hopefully get these additional deferred items on board, in particular the one that I have introduced a motion on is the residential monthly billing practice. But is it your sense that this sort of program, this modernization effort, phase one that we're in, unless we're already in phase two, do you think this is sort of what we're going to see in total for this particular project, or do you anticipate any additional sort of phases as we're bringing this system into, as I said, the modern era?
Well, I mean, the platform that we're going to is a modern platform. It is a commercial set of commercial products. They are used in multiple places. That, always has some trade-offs, right? Some features we might want aren't going to show up necessarily in the next release, right? But overall, you end up with something that has a lot of development horsepower behind it, has a lot of testing horsepower, and often there's somebody else who's the first one to try that, and they figure out what they need to further tweak. So, there's a sort of standard rule. You try not to use the .0 release of anything. And so there are some strong advantages to being with a commercial product, and we have had because we are an important customer to them with our scale, we've had quite good support out of Oracle. I mean, there's some things we wish they'd fixed a little faster, but we have resources that come to us fairly regularly to work through problems with us and move forward. These platforms, you need to stay within a reasonable currency of their versions. So I expect within a couple years, 2 to 3 years, we'll do an upgrade, and we'll probably need some additional support to do the upgrade. But they're much smaller scale projects than something like this total rip and replace of all these systems that we had to do in this one to really catch us up and get us to a point where we have the ability to configure a lot of adjustments and not have to have somebody go in and try to write custom code for everything we want to do.
Mr. Blumenfield.
I'll sort of echo your concern about, I've seen these big behemoth projects just drag on and cost more. And to your point about the timing, how we sometimes get behind the technology. This has been going on since this contract was from 2010, and now it'll be extended to 2015. And pretty much everything that was done in 2010 is obsolete by now. So do you see this as a problem? I mean, it sort of strikes me with a red flag, but...
Well, we're within, well within the support window of this version of the product. So when we made our selection and when we actually had to start installing software, which is a little bit later, right, because you have a lot of detailed requirements, processes, gap processes, etc. And we have done some upgrades along the way. We instituted a freeze point a while ago on versions unless there was a major patch that was required to fix what we call a severity 1 error. That is a problem that we had to have fixed before we could go live. We did recently have to implement one patch set on the mobile workforce manager for exactly that purpose. So on that product, we are on absolutely the very latest patch set. We're very, very close to the latest on all the other ones because these products, because they are in such use, they don't do a lot of changes on a every year kind of basis. They have pretty lengthy product cycles on them. So I'm very confident that the platform is a good one and we'll be able to stay with it over a long haul. If you want to go back historically and look at the evolution of this product, at least the core customer care and billing was a product that had quite a length when it was owned by a company called SPL World Group. In the early 2000s, they made a decision to totally rewrite their software to a Java base. So the base code of this product is sort of mid-2000s, and it stayed very true to the Java Enterprise model, which is still a very, very current code base. So I'm not as worried about that as I might be otherwise.
And are you sure that the additional $12 million isn't, or is any of the additional $12 million caused by that time lag?
Well, the deferred items, I mean, any project like this, and I've been involved in 2 billing systems and a couple ERP implementations at various cities. At some point, you look at what you have still in front of you and you make some decisions as to, are there some things, because there's a danger in trying to get everything perfect before you go live. You exhaust the project team. You start draining confidence from people. At some point, you have to say, okay, what do I really need to go live? And are there some things I can defer and go live? And those are the kinds of things we have there, like the monthly billing issue, like some of the very complex meters that we built. We calculate in a different system right now, and we want to move over so everything's unified in one place. You make some of those decisions. I would say those are the things that are really related to time, and those are conscious business decisions to sort of minimize risk on a project. And those are decisions we made very consciously, and sometimes with very long hours of debate and review with not only the two sponsors of the project, but a number of the key staff who are involved, and we'll have to live with making the system operate day to day to crank out the now 40 to 60,000 bills a day and potentially 80 to 100,000 bills a day that we will be seeing when we go to monthly billing.
Mr. Crest.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I wonder if you could just give us a little more of an idea of what improvements in customer service our ratepayers will receive as a result of this upgrade of the system.
So this particular event, I like to tell my employees and our business partners that this is primarily a technology event. So this particular event over Labor Day, we're trying to make it very low to no customer impact. So what we're trying to do is just change out the technology to give us this platform to improve the customer experience. And what I specifically mean about that is I think the customer event really is monthly billing, because then, once the customers get monthly billing, then we can give them more graphical depictions of their usage. We can give them comparisons of what their immediate neighborhood is using, so we can give them a lot of those different information points once we have the system in place. And so kind of just the short answer is this particular thing is a technology event over Labor Day, but monthly billing that I hope to pilot as early as November will start becoming a customer event. And sort of the reason for the pilot is because it is such a big impact to customers. I want to make sure that the communication around it, the outreach, the options we give customers, because every other month is still going to be, we read the meters every other month. And so we just have to make sure that customers, the experience gets better for them and the options also multiply.
Now, I know our mayor has obviously been focused on trying to improve our use of technology and the city's 311 app and all of that. I wonder if there's a way to make our utility more user-friendly and use social media and new technology. Are we anticipating that as well? And
Yes.
how so, and does that connect with this project as well?
So I want to just mention a couple things. So one of the things that customers may notice, they will notice that they have a new account number, and it's no longer a 22-digit CAN. It's a bit shorter. But more than that, we now have in sort of a modern system, you wouldn't imagine that we've been living all these years with these constraints. But if you left the city, you moved across the line to Glendale and moved back a year later, we didn't have you in there as a person anymore. We didn't have your account information. You started over. In the new system, you don't start over. We maintain you as an entity. So moves become, and we have a lot of people who move around. We have a lot of renters, we have a lot of people who move. The system for dealing with that becomes much easier. The other place where I think customers will see improvements is how sort of things related to meter exchanges are done once we're fully into this system. That's been a cause of, for many people, very delayed bills, which the council has heard about and asked us about. And the changes in some of the business process that are supported with better automation here will help us address that problem going forward. So there are some things that the technology will help with, some even fairly early into this, in addition to the monthly billing piece. The other thing, I mean, is, one of the things we did sort of really in some ways to build the sort of project skill set for the department to help take on this thing, which is a monstrous project, was we did some changes. We implemented a different IVR. We allowed people to start paying bills and doing more things on an automated way, either through the telephone. Then we revised our website and added more services to the website so people can pay bills. They can, there are other things they can apply for through the web portal. We are using, and not directly related to this project, but more in general, a Facebook and Twitter presence to expand how we provide information out to the community. So there are a lot of efforts to try to improve using those technologies as we go forward. But this is really a core system. This system is the cash register for the department. And more than anything else, we've got to convert 1.4 million electric accounts, 600,000+ water accounts, all those meters, make sure everything aligns properly. We've been finding, we've had to do a fair amount of cleanup just around all those conversions because, frankly, in 39 years, you're going to find some bad data here and there. Addresses in the old system, the field length for addresses was not long enough to take all the official addresses of streets in this city and put them in the system. You had to abbreviate them. I mean, it causes nightmares when you get into some of the billing and mailing issues. We've tackled a lot of those in advance, but we're making sure that we avoid those problems reoccurring as part of this implementation. It really is very critical that this thing continues to move forward.
Just got one quick question for Mr. Crest.
Mr. Labange.
Okay, just a question. Meter readers, are they under your jurisdiction?
Yes.
So the other day I saw the gas company come by slow at my house, and I said, I guess they got automated because it looked like a little Google car. Okay, it had some thing on top. Are we moving in that direction?
Yes, we are. Every meter that we exchange from the analog meter, it becomes a radio frequency meter.
Okay.
So our meter readers are able then to read those meters with being just in the vicinity of the meter, not having to go right up to the meter. And, of course, that helps all of the residents of Los Angeles because we don't have to always have access.
Got it. And so if there's 800,000 meters in the city, is that correct?
Water meters.
2.2 million.
2.2 billion meters? And how many of them are automated?
We have a couple 100,000 RF meters already on the electric side.
What do you call them?
RF, radio frequency meter.
Yeah, in high school, that was a bad word. Okay.
Is it?
Okay. It's true. Same high school? Then you go to one? No, okay, good. Anyway, okay. Radio frequency. You didn't know that. You probably went to Catholic school.
We'll tell you afterwards.
Okay. So, all right. So 200,000 are now there. Do you project that even in 5 years that it will be 500,000 and more?
It's our standard meter now, and so every exchange is to an RF meter, or in fact, and I'm not sure the committee knows, but we do have a 52,000 AMI pilot, so sort of the smart grid pilot with the Department of Energy.
So you're working that direction. That's good. That's a key thing. Take credit for it, Mr. Chair. Okay.
I will, Mr. Labange. Mr. Blumenfield.
Sort of on that point, I wanted to learn a little bit more about the meter data management and in particular, we're at the RF thing, but why not move to if we talked about going to Wi-Fi and trying want to try to Wi-Fi the city, but how much could we save if we
No.
skipped over the RF technology, because that's yesterday, and moved into the future, couldn't we do this and save more money?
So today we have a few classes of meters that are radio connected directly, right? Smart meters. In some of the large commercial areas, and some of the net metering solar, some of the electric vehicle meters, and we have this 50,000 pilot that we're putting out right now. And basically that pilot is to really sort of work through all the bugs and issues of getting the data, figuring out how to really use that data well for billing, what sort of validation and estimations you have to use with it, how you manage that kind of system in a pilot level before we want to try to roll out.
The
But
50,000 is what kind of meters? You said?
those are what you would view as the same sort of smart meter Edison or PG&E or CenterPoint are using. It basically uses, and there are different technologies, and that's part of what the pilot is about. Some use essentially a cell phone directly. Some use a mesh network to connect to a concentrator, which may either use a 3G or 4G connection back to us. We are also piloting our own sort of WiMAX backhaul, because we have so many substations distributed around the city where we have fiber to them that we really want to look at taking advantage of those network resources to bring that data back. So that's all part of what we're trying to learn over the next couple of years with the pilot, and make some smart choices with that, which I'm sure we will be back to talk to you about as we get closer.
To me, that's very exciting stuff in terms of that you're moving in that direction. And I want somehow to think about this citywide and not just with the department, because just as there's a certain amount that it would cost for you to put a mesh network in, the same can be said for gas company, the same could be said for quite a number of city services. And if you add them all together, it might be a heck of a lot cheaper to just do one mesh network over the whole city and be able to provide these services to you and to your meters, to all the other meters, and as a public benefit, provide Wi-Fi to all citizens.
So, I mean, the Wi-Fi one is...
Is that being are you guys thinking outside of your department in terms of thinking about how this could overlay with other city agencies?
We are. The Wi-Fi discussion, maybe is probably a totally separate briefing and discussion. The gas company.
If I may add, what's particular about the Department of Water and Power and its uses is we have to piggyback on top of what Prop 26 and 70 say about the uses of DWP ratepayer money. And so what we do is we have to make sure that wherever that's provided, it's on top of what DWP is already using. So your idea of when you're reading a meter and if there's Wi-Fi capability that somebody can tap into as a part of that usage, that's probably possible. But we'd be glad to look into that for you, and the department will be glad to look into it for you.
Great. Well, I would very much like that. Thank you.
As you can tell, we are incredibly interested in the area, and I've actually, when I see this sort of list of deferred items that are intended to make the experience for the customer more beneficial, I actually get very excited, and I can't tell you how excited I am that you all can start batch controlling letters and then deriving algorithms that maybe can help us understand usage and maybe potentially identify additional care customers as a result of their sort of credit score, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So very exciting. So rather than sort of continue to ask on this, let me ask you, as a matter of course, will you all be going to the Department of Water and Power Commission to give them updates on this process where we can listen in and pay attention?
Yes, absolutely, we will.
Okay, so when's sort of the next anticipated sort of update that you all will be, as it relates to Phase 2 here?
Well, we really wanted to give them an update after we went live and were able to stabilize the system, so probably 30 to 60 days after September 3rd.
Mr. Labange and I want to be there, I'm sure, as my
Okay.
colleagues are, to flip the switch here when you go live, because it's
Okay.
going to run
Great, I know.
perfectly, right? Where's the,
It will run
there's a
well.
lot of gritting of teeth in the audience there. Thank you very much. Members, is there a motion to move this item to, very good, so moved by Mr. Labange, seconded by Mr. Koretz. The item is unanimous. Thank you very much. We're moving on to item number 4.
Item number 4, CAO and Public Works reports relative to proposed supplemental agreement with USA Waste of California for landfill disposal services. Staff from the CAO's office and Bureau of Sanitation.
Very good. Elise Wilson, we know you all. Who are you?
Javier Polanco, Bureau of Sanitation.
Very good.
Rowena Romano, Bureau of Sanitation.
Very good. Please feel free to begin.
Okay. Item number 4 on the agenda is a CAO report on a supplemental agreement with USA Waste of California to provide landfill disposal services at the El Sobrante landfill in Corona. In 2005, Council took an action to ask the Bureau to look at diverting 600 tons per day of waste from Sunshine Canyon. Through an RFP process, the Bureau selected USA Waste. That contract, 5-year contract, expired recently, and the supplemental agreement is required to extend it for 2 more years to the end of this fiscal year when the Bureau can execute a new contract. The supplemental agreement also increased the contract ceiling by an additional $10 million. And because it's extending the contract from 5 to 7 years, council approval is required. Sufficient funds are available within the Solid Waste Resources Revenue Fund to support the cost of the agreement, and our office is recommending that the council authorize the Bureau to execute the supplemental agreement.
Very good. Sanitation, have anything to add?
This contract is important for us to continue so that we have contingencies to our primary disposal that we use. We use primarily Sunshine Canyon landfill, and it's always good to have backups for the 1 million tons of trash that we handle and manage throughout the course of the year.
Very good. There are no speaker cards on the item. Members, is there any questions from our panel? Hearing and seeing none. Is there a motion to approve the motion?
Move the item.
Very good. To move the item, Mr. Koretz moves. Mr. Labange seconds. The item is unanimous. Thank you very much. Item number 5.
Item number 5, CAO and Public Works reports relative to proposed letter of agreement with Canejo Crest Landscape Services to provide site services for the Japanese garden at the Tillman Reclamation Plant.
Very good. Wilson, are you presenting on this, or is it Elise?
That's me.
All right, Elise, let it rip. This is very important. The Japanese Garden Center in CD 6.
Okay. Item number 5 on the agenda is a CAO report relative to the proposed contract with Canejo Crest Landscape Incorporated to provide landscape and site services for the Japanese garden of the Donald C. Tillman Reclamation Plant in San Fernando Valley. The total term of the contract is 5 years with maximum funding at $3.5 million. Sufficient funds are available within the Sewer Construction and Maintenance Fund to support the first-year costs of the contract, and future funding will be provided through the city's annual budget process and subject to the mayor and council approval. Our office is recommending that the council authorize the Bureau to execute the contract with Canejo Crest Landscape Incorporated.
Very good. And your experience with Canejo Landscaping? Very good, sir, from the Japanese Garden Center?
Yeah, Gene Green, Bureau of Sanitation, in charge of Japanese Garden. They've been on board for the past 6 months, doing an outstanding job. Their costs are lower. They're very efficient. They're local in the valley. All the people who work for the company live in the city of LA, which is very unique on top of everything else.
Yeah, no, it is you all have been there, of course, members. Tillman, Japanese Garden, very tranquil, beautiful. Job well done, it looks like, from my very limited experience when I go and visit. Members, there's no cards on the item. Is there any questions?
Just a question. Who is Donald Tillman?
Mr. Labange, educate us.
He was a city engineer for many years, and city engineering was on the 6th floor in City Hall, and he was instrumental in developing this in the Sepulveda Basin, among other projects, and so they named it after him. But also, this is one of the beauties of our Bureau of Sanitation and what they do in transforming space and using wastewater. We're very proud of them and the landscaping, and I know it's a special part of that district. And I know Mr. Cardenas, now Congressman, fought hard to get that in his district, and now Ms. Martinez is responsible.
That's right.
So
So when did the Japanese garden get there? It came after Tillman, obviously,
After
right?
the water comes first.
Whose idea was the garden?
I don't know the whole history of that.
Well, I can explain if you want me to.
Mr.
We've got somebody who knows the answer.
I helped build the place, so I've been there before dirt. What happens, I used to know Don Tillman, I used to work in engineering as a landscape architect. Don Tillman was taking classes from Quichiquan at UCLA.
Go
They
Bruins.
got together to decide that the best way to educate people about water reclamation is to have a Japanese garden with a large body of water.
Wow.
It was a condition of a lease agreement to the city of LA that the garden be built on the first phase of Tillman, otherwise it cannot be built. It was mitigation. Next thing on top of that was the planning department required that to educate the public on water reclamation. So it was, again, that thing both came at the same time. You could not build a plant without the garden. It's in a lease agreement. We have a separate lease agreement with the Corps for that garden. And so we want to shut Tillman down, you shut the garden down. You want to shut the garden down, you shut Tillman down. So either way.
That's fantastic. I'm proud to move the item. Mr. Blumenfield, would you, a question? Go ahead.
And this is also coming from someone who's a big fan of Tillman. It was in my former assembly district, although it's not in my council district. And in fact, I'd like to see capacity increased and more purple pipes coming out of Tillman and used to irrigate all sorts of public lands along the Orange Line.
Yeah.
Pierce College and other places could really use that reclaimed water. So I'd love to see the expansion. My question is, I want to understand, it appears that there's a 15% increase in the cost over with this new contract, and I want to understand if that's the case, and if so, why is there the increase? Maybe I'm misreading it, but
Yeah, costs are really down. The contract, the last one expired in '08, and we're on the living wage ordinance at the garden, so the contract goes up at 2% per year in cost of living. 1 year there was 0, and 50% increase is just over the time from '08 to, I guess, 15 is going to be a potential 15% increase, but it's a minor amount of money compared to what $3.5 million to be able to do the project versus the $7 million for the city to do the project. The cost of materials has gone up as far as we purchased this contract, also purchased materials to do projects there, and also to do some renovation if necessary in the garden. So that's where the 15% is probably coming in.
so you're saying it's the cost of materials?
Cost of materials plus a 2% living wage ordinance increase required the city pay the contractor.
Over the course of those years? Because it
Yes.
just, in general, during that time frame, that was the downturn in the economy, so a lot of things go the other direction, and this is going in the upward
Yes.
direction. As much as it's a great project, I just want to understand.
Yeah, it's materials cost, again, the 2% is required. They have 1 year at 0. All the rest of them, when city employees were getting 0, they're getting 2% increase over all those years for 1 year. And the materials cost has definitely gone up, but the labor cost on this current contract, per hour cost, has gone down. So it doesn't show the whole picture. Some has gone up and some has gone down.
Okay, well, I don't know if there's a way to break that out a little bit. I'm happy to move the item, but I'd still love to get a better breakdown on how that, where those increase in costs have come from.
Sure.
I hear what you're saying in terms of generically how it's broken down, but I'm sort of a numbers guy. I like to see it out, broken out.
We have the numbers.
Great. Well, would love to get a
Email?
email and obviously, through the chair, I think it should be formally not just to me, but to the committee.
Very good. If you all would be willing to share that with the committee, we'll share it with all the members. I move the measure. Mr. Blumenfield is a second. Very good. Members, any questions? Hearing and seeing none, the measure is out on a unanimous vote. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
All right, item number 6. My
Number
apologies.
6.
6.
CEO, Board of Public Works report relative to proposal letter of agreement with Southern California Disposal and Recycling Company for transfer, transport, and disposal of city waste from the West Los Angeles waste shed.
Very good. Please.
Good afternoon. So item 6 on the agenda is a sale report on a sole source contract with Southern California Disposal for transfer station services from the West LA waste shed, and also to act as a backup transfer station for Clark's. Total term of this contract is about 10 and a half years, and the maximum funding of this contract will be determined based on will be based on the amount approved by the mayor and council in the city's annual budget process. On page 2 and 3 of the CAO report, you'll see that there's different projected costs. One, assuming 100 ton per day, the city delivering 100 tons per day, it comes out to about $7.5 million. However, if we ramp it up to about 300 tons per day, it'll come out to about $22.5 million cost over that 10-year period. This transfer station is the only one on the facility on the West LA waste shed that has the available capacity to accept the city's waste and also to act as a backup for Clark's. Sufficient funds are available within the Solid Waste Resources Revenue Fund to support the first-year costs of the contract, and future funding will be provided through the city's annual budget process. Our office is also recommending that the council authorize the Bureau to execute the sole source contract with Southern California Disposal.
Very good. There are no cards on the item. Members, any questions? Hearing and seeing none. Is there a motion? Moved by Mr. Blumenfield, seconded by Mr. Labange. That measure is out with a unanimous vote.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 7.
And your final item, Mr. Chair?
Just a point there for the staff, for the members, the new members, you should have a map of the city that you provide. The new members just update us on our waste shed areas and where we have just the location so you know I'm familiar. It's very tough to find in sight, and once they do, they kind of hold on to it as long as they can. Thank
We'll
you.
provide that to you. Yes, sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Crest.
I was a little bit delayed, and it doesn't impact supporting the item, but I did have one question.
Sure, if we can bring staff back for item number 6. The measure has been held on the desk, and we're going to rehear the item.
I'm just wondering, through this contract, do we have the ability to track what happens to our recycled items? Because I know there are always questions about whether plastics wind up going to China and getting burned and things like that. Do we have the ability to actually be sure that our recycled items are recycled?
Well, this primarily serves the black bin waste that gets taken to these transfer stations. It's not material from the blue bin that's dedicated for recyclables, but we can do waste characterizations for material that does end up going to the landfills to see what percentage of recyclables are still getting into the waste stream.
And when we actually do separate out recyclables, though, are we able to actually track them to be sure they are recycled? That's my real question.
Oh, yes, we do. We take our recyclables to the material recovery facilities, and they give us receipts for all their shipments to the end users of those recyclables on a monthly basis.
Do we ever physically track those to be sure that what they're claiming is done with them is actually done?
Well, for most of the materials are shipped overseas, so we do get the receipts of where they're going overseas, but we haven't, gone to China to track them. But,
it may be more appropriate as we go forward with our broader waste project.
I think that would be...
I would like to keep an eye on that.
Yeah, I think that would be ideal. But just to be clear, this facility only deals with the black bin, not the blue bin. And I think we should absolutely, as this committee moves forward on our waste shed challenges, start identifying sort of what indeed happens with blue, the black, and the green bins. Very good. Thank you.
Councilman Alex Hello, Bureau of Sanitation. We are preparing an RFP for the blue bin, and that is part of the process, is that we will be tracking where it goes overseas and what happens to it, but not under this.
Since it's not agendized, we'll just go ahead and sort of, if you all want to have a sidebar, happy to have the conversation in committee, but we should really stick to the items that were agendized for the public. Item number 7.
Number 7, CAO and Public Works reports relative to proposed First Amendments to 8 on-call contracts for planning, technical support, and consulting services for the wastewater, stormwater, and solid resources programs. Staff from the Bureau of Sanitation and CAO as well.
Item number 7 on the agenda is a CAO report on the proposed First Amendments to extend the term of 8 existing on-call contracts to provide consulting services for planning and technical support for the Bureau of Sanitation's wastewater, stormwater, and solid resources programs. On-call projects are awarded on a project-by-project basis from an established list of eligible contractors. The proposed amendments will extend the term of the existing on-call list by 2 years in order to provide sufficient time to establish a new on-call list, with no impact on the funding or the scope of the work. The contracts will be funded through an eligible range of funding sources dependent upon the project requirements. Sufficient funds are available within the Solid Waste Resources Revenue Fund, Sewer Construction and Maintenance Fund, and the Stormwater Pollution Abatement Fund to support the cost of the extension. Our office is recommending that the Council authorize the Bureau to execute the First Amendments to the 8 on-call contracts.
Very good. Let's go ahead and let staff introduce themselves now. Staff?
Adel Hashkhalid, I'm the Assistant General Manager for Sanitation.
Debbie Pham, the on-call manager for Bureau of Sanitation.
Very good. Members, there aren't any cards on this, but I do have a couple of questions. So these are primarily sort of standby contractors. What is the nature of the work that they're standing by for? It looks like you've got various engineering firms.
Sure. Councilman, and these are, the Bureau of Sanitation deals with a lot of issues and mandates and services that require quick response. And for example, if you have a stormwater permit, they're required to develop a plan. It's required to be done in 18 months. And the time to get a new contract in place will take you a lot more than 18 months. So by the time you get the contract, you probably the plan is due. So what we are using this is kind of a bench to use as needed on a fast way to tap into these consultant services. And they're very diverse consultant service to provide all services, all the way from services on engineering for the sewer system, stormwater planning, green infrastructure, solid waste support, waste to energy, anything that would need us to ensure that we're providing the services that we need in a timely manner, an efficient manner, and a cost-effective manner. So the work will be specialized sometimes and requires a short turnaround, and sometimes because of the staffing, we don't have enough staffing in place to provide the support. We would tap into this quickly to ensure that we are complying with our permits and the mandates that we do. So the bottom line, this is a bench for us to ensure that's available to us to get the job done very fast and very effective.
And do these firms all have the same capabilities, or do you have two mixed bag where you've got two that are experts in this, two that are expert in that? I mean,
the requirement of all the 8 teams is to have all diverse teams on their team. So each team would be able to handle all services, and anytime we have a service, we can actually go to all 8 teams and ask them to provide a proposal. It'll be a quick turnaround, and they should be able to provide all services as needed, and we will evaluate the company that would provide us the best response and take it from there.
very good. Members, any questions? Mr. Kretz.
Is there any element of this that has anything to do with the fact that our snowpack is lower than it's been in probably 100 years, and that stormwater is more of a rarity? So is there anything to do, anything to use our increasingly scarce stormwater more intelligently? Is that part of this?
Yeah. It's music to my heart. As you know, I believe strongly in how we manage our resources, and for us to be sustainable in the city, we need to ensure that we manage our resources locally. Stormwater, I know the Councilman Blumenfeld introduced a motion earlier. I know, the chair is very eager, and I know yourself and Councilman Labange are big on how we manage ourselves and manage our resources. Stormwater is a big thing for us. It's a challenge because of the pollution we have, but also it's an opportunity. One of the things that we're using this is to ensure that we implement green infrastructure, green solutions, where we are greening communities, capturing stormwater, putting it underground. But also, one of the things that we're using this for now is to develop what's called enhanced water management plan as part of our stormwater permit that will take all the watersheds we have in the city, 4 watersheds, and develop a plan over the next 18 months to capture runoff and rain and deal with the pollution in a way that can replenish our groundwater and reuse the water. So yes, this is a tool in the toolbox that we're using to meet the goal that the Bureau has and the city has and your council and the mayor has in making the city a sustainable city.
Very good. Thank you.
Members, any additional questions? Mr.
Last
Labange.
comment. The creativity they're coming up with is very important. Our challenge will be, as you mentioned earlier, council member, on the reclaimed water, on the purple pipe. The people of the river movement, they still want water in the river. But we could take that water and really use it throughout the San Fernando Valley, pump it out, pump it west, get it to Caltrans to make the parkways green as opposed to that, all the challenges. So it's a balancing act. I think the biggest thing that Adele and his team has tried to do is we look at, I'm an advocate for check dams on the Los Angeles River, in the river proper, because of the 365 days, maybe there's 320 that there's rain. But with the check dam, we could remove the debris before it gets to Long Beach. The worst thing that we do as a city is have our pollution go somewhere outside our city. But they're working on it, and I think it's just a concept. The tough thing is about all the water uses that will go on. And one mistake that we made years ago, and I don't know if any of you were in office, Mr. Koretz, the East Valley Water Reclamation Plant, which was taking Sepulveda wastewater, pumping it through the ground, cleaning out the aquifers, all the East Valley that has all the challenges from the auto and the aviation industry, but it was stopped because it had a bad headline. I love Rick Orloff. I love Rick Orloff, but his paper had a headline that changed the world. Well, I don't want to say toilet to tap, but you said it.
It's flowers to showers now.
Flowers to showers.
Flowers to showers, Mr. Blumenfeld. That's the best I've heard from anybody. You made that up yourself?
No, I didn't.
No, he
Who made
didn't.
it up? Who made it up? Take credit for it.
Mr. Koretz.
I like it. I'll quote it, though.
One other question. So, are there other resources we could be giving you to help you in the effort to make better use of stormwater that we're not currently?
We as you know, our biggest challenge is funding when it comes to stormwater. We're trying to be creative in leveraging resources, going after state grants thanks to the past legislator at the state level. We are trying to get Prop 84, but it's difficult. I think what we're trying to do is leverage resources, try to be creative. We are coming to you in response to the council motion introduced by Councilman Blumenfeld, and is to come back and have a discussion about how to address the stormwater issues. We have a lot of challenges. As you know, we worked with the county collaboratively, continue to work with the county on a funding initiative to fund stormwater, address stormwater, and do it in a watershed basis. I believe we're going to come back to you with my general manager, Enrique Zaldivar, and us to have a discussion with your committee and the council as to which way we go forward. It's an opportunity to really transform the city and make the city better. We have issues, problems, whether it's flooding, water pollution, etc., LA River issues, but we can all deal with this and improve the quality of life in the city while improving water quality and making us more sustainable. So, Councilman, yes, we have needs for a lot of resources when it comes to stormwater. We're very deficient in that area. We're very creative right now to do what we need to do. Prop O, thanks to our residents in Los Angeles by voting it in 2004, but I think it was down payment. It was just a start, and we're glad that we're able to build some of the great projects all the way from the Valley to San Pedro in East LA and the West Side. We did a lot of things. However, it's just a down payment. But also what it did, it gave and made the stormwater, clean water projects visible. People now see it. They know what it means to people in Sun Valley to address flooding and pollution while greening a neighborhood in Elmer Street, whether it's in the Garvanza where we're capturing 1 million gallons, whether it's in the east side and also in Westwood by the transportation project on the Expo. We're trying to build a stormwater project along the Expo line. We need a lot of funding, resources, etc. We're working with the CAO. We're going to be coming to you, working with the CLA, and trying to figure out how to develop a strategy, working with our partners in the region. But at some point, we need to move forward and figure out how to get this, because there's a huge opportunity for the city to address this, but to make the city a better place.
Members, any additional questions? That sounds like a fantastic close. Is there a motion to move the item? Moved by Mr. Koretz, seconded by Mr. Blumenfield. That measure is out on a unanimous vote. Thank you all very much for... There's no other business, Mr. CLA?
No.
Hearing and seeing none, there's also no gavel. This meeting's